Welcome back for our unit on the executive branch. Today we're going to be looking at the job description of the president. Let's just start by looking at some of the things that the president does or has or participates in. So, Camp David, that you see pictured here in the bottom right hand corner, is where the president often goes for rest, but to continue working in peace as well. So, there have been some pretty important meetings that have happened between the president and foreign dignitaries at Camp David because it is a more relaxed environment than the White House. In the middle, the limousine that you see here is known as the Beast. It is a very highly technical version of a limousine. It's got like bulletproof windows, it's got body armor, it's really like tricked out engine and everything to make sure it can go really fast to help protect the president when he's traveling places. When he's traveling by air, the president will fly in either Air Force One or Marine One, which is the helicopter. Marine One is generally used for short trips to transport the president for short distances, whereas Air Force One is going to be used over longer distances. And technically, any airplane that the president is flying on is designated as Air Force One. So if for some reason this particular airplane breaks and they don't have any of the backup Air Force One planes that are painted like this ready, the president can get on a regular airplane, but then it becomes Air Force One. Now, within the White House itself, some of the perks of the president, there's a theater room. And they also have a bowling alley, although I think they said President Obama took out the bowling alley and put in a basketball court instead. I'd have to double check on that one to see if the bowling alley is still actually there. So, what are some of the other term, pay, and perks of the president? First up, term. You serve a 4-year term as president, and you can only serve 2 terms. This was a tradition set by George Washington until Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or FDR. So George Washington said that he did not want to serve a second term. He saw the office of president as something that should be only for a temporary period of time and not continuing to be elected every 4 years until you die. FDR actually was elected to be president more than 2 terms. I think he had 4 terms. And so FDR broke that tradition. It was not an official rule in the Constitution until after FDR. So the 22nd Amendment, which was passed in 1951, set the term limit at 2 with a maximum of 10 years. So if you are elected to be president twice, you will only serve for 8 years. However, if you are vice president when the president passes away or leaves office, you can actually serve up to 2 years of that president's term to finish that term. And then you can go ahead, I've got pop-ups everywhere. Okay. Then you can go ahead and run for 2 more terms as your own terms as president. Unfortunately, if you serve 3 or more years as president for a president who has passed away or removed from office, then you would only be able to run for 1 more term after that because you would have served 3, maybe 4 years of that term, and it cuts into your 10 years. You cannot serve 3 years finishing another president's term plus be elected for another 4 years, because then that's 7, and run for president and say, well, I'm only going to do it 3 years so that I meet my 10-year limit. That's not how it works. If you were going to go over your 10-year limit, you do not get to run for that next term. Now, how much does the president get paid? Their pay is set by Congress. Congress gets to decide on presidential pay raises, and it is currently $400,000. Some of the perks of being president, you get to use the White House. So you get to live in the White House with all of its amenities. There are also cars, helicopter, which is Air Force One, the airplane, Air Force I'm sorry, the helicopter, which is Marine One, the plane, which is Air Force One. They get a personal chef, a private doctor, staff to work around the White House and help them. They get full time protection from the Secret Service, and they even get a pension when they leave office. Now, here's a little peek at what part of the White House looks like that the president's family lives in. So you can see there are multiple bedrooms and bathrooms. They get a sitting room, there's a workout room, a music room, quite a lot of things happening in their residence at the White House. Now, succession and disability. Succession is all about what happens if the president can no longer be president or if the president dies while in office. Originally, there was no plan in their constitution. Okay? The vice president took over by tradition until the 25th Amendment in 1967. So they decided that it made sense for the vice president to become president before the 25th Amendment made it official. The succession order currently is, according to the 25th Amendment, the vice president, the Speaker of the House, the President pro tempore, Secretary of State, then the heads of the presidential cabinet in order of creation. So there are 15 members of the president's cabinet that could potentially become president, were all the people in front of them in line to die or not want the office. Now, in terms of presidential disability, this was also set by the 25th Amendment. The vice president becomes acting president. So they do not become the permanent president, but they assume the job of the president if first the president informs Congress in writing that the vice president will be taking over, or two, the vice president and the majority of the cabinet heads inform Congress in writing that the president is incapacitated. So for situation number one, it could be something as simple as the president needs to have a dental procedure and they are going to be putting him to sleep. While he is under anesthesia, he can't make decisions as president. So he can write a letter that says the vice president is going to take over those responsibilities. The vice president will then take over the responsibilities of the presidency until the president comes out of that surgery and resumes those powers. For situation number two, it could be that the president never had time to make that letter. Maybe the president was injured somehow and had to be rushed into surgery. Maybe it was a heart attack, and the president's not able to make decisions as the president anymore. In that situation, the vice president and the cabinet members would then inform Congress that they need someone to be in charge. They need the vice president to take over as president until he is well again. Now, the job description that you see here for a CEO are very similar to what we would like for our president to have. So leadership responsibilities, high-level decisions, keeping others informed about those decisions, implementing policies, an education such as a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, and then experience in a senior management position. So someone who has that leadership quality we look for in a president. These are all very similar to what the president actually does. So first job of the president is to act as chief of state. This means they are the ceremonial head of our government. They represent the people of the U.S. as their leader. Oops, I apologize. And they go through a lot of ceremonies. Like here you'll see we have award ceremonies with the awarding of medals or plaques. They do a lot of important ceremonies that are going to show that the president is the one in charge of the country and can bestow honors upon people. Now, our second job is chief executive. The executive power shall be vested in a president of the United States of America. So this one comes straight from the Constitution. It means that the president executes the laws passed by Congress, implements policy, supervises the executive branch, prepares the executive budget, and appoints and removes executive officials. They are the boss of anyone working in the executive branch and must fulfill all the obligations of a boss. Next up, Chief Administrator. This is similar role as the CEO of a major corporation. So like we saw before, someone who has to have leadership and be able to tell other people what to do and keep our country running in a productive fashion. Okay? So they are the head of the federal government and of all the agencies in the federal government. They appoint the heads of the agencies to run them and can also fire them. So they pick people like the Secretary of Education, or they can tell the head of the FBI they don't like the job that they're doing and that they need to replace them. Lastly, they are the boss of over 2.7 million people with a budget of over $2 trillion. So they have to make sure that everyone is doing their job properly and that everyone is being paid as they're supposed to. Now, chief legislator. They help shape public policy along with Congress. So they work with Congress on the creation of laws. Okay? They can sign or veto all bills passed by Congress. They also initiate, suggest, request, insist, and demand Congress to enact his legislation. So the president can try to tell Congress what kind of laws they want them to have. Now, as commander in chief, the president is in charge of the military. That's about 1.4 million military members. They appoint the head of the branches of the military. So think Coast Guard, Air Force, Navy, Army, Marines. And they also are the final decision maker on all actions taken by the military. Their job is to protect all Americans and the interests of Americans. Next up, chief diplomat. As chief diplomat, the president is in charge of setting foreign policy. So this is how we interact with other countries. They are the nation's chief spokesperson. They also negotiate treaties and trade agreements with other countries. And the Department of State, which is headed by the Secretary of State, assists the president in this role. So the Secretary of State and the Department of State will also speak with foreign countries and help with the relationship they have with the United States. Now, chief of party. The president is the de facto or assumed leader of their party. The expectations are to help other party members get elected and push their party platform. They will raise money, campaign for others, and use media to help promote their political party and its platform. Now, chief citizen. The president is expected to work for and represent the public's interest. They're expected to console, encourage, promote, and many other things for the U.S. and its people. So they're expected to participate in many different traditions like Christmas, Easter, and Thanksgiving. So let's take a look at some of those traditions. The family is considered the first family, so they are traditionally out in the public eye. The first family will also traditionally have a first pet. Not every president has, but many of them have. So usually it will be a dog, but it could also be a cat or another animal. Oh, sorry guys. Why am I not doing a good job at this today? There we go. Okay. So we were talking about first pet. Our next thing, visiting the troops. The president will travel within the United States and around the world to visit the American troops for morale purposes, for talking to them and getting to know what is going on in their lives and their experiences. Now, they will also have a White House portrait made. It started off as a painting because cameras didn't exist, and it traditionally still is a painting. After president leaves office, they will have a presidential library built in their honor. In Texas, we have a couple of them. We have the Lyndon B. Johnson, the LBJ Library at UT in Austin. There's also the George H.W. Bush. So the first Bush in office was Their library was built in College Station, Texas at A&M's campus. I'm going to show you guys some really cool pictures of the Reagan Library that is in California. If you ever have a chance to go to a presidential library, you should check it out. They have cool stuff. It's not just about books. They'll also have a museum of sorts to show you many of the things from that president's time in office and their life. Then holiday traditions. So some of those include lighting of the Christmas tree, decorating the White House for holidays, the pardoning of the Thanksgiving turkey, which I think is funny. They will usually bring more than one turkey to the White House, and the president will give an unofficial pardon to one of those turkeys, saying that he is not going to be cooked for Thanksgiving dinner. Okay. They also have the Easter egg roll on the grounds of the White House, and they can also have trick-or-treating at the White House. So here are some pictures we can see of America's first family. So you'll see even the Reagans here on a button as America's first family. Usually we'll see families including young children, but they do not have to be. Some presidents have children that are older and do not live in the White House with them. Some even grow up in the White House, like the Obamas and the Bush twins, the Clintons as well with their daughter Chelsea. Now, here are a couple different things we've got. So here is the George H.W. Bush Presidential Library and Museum. So you can see there is the president himself, along with actually a couple of the other presidents who came for this particular ceremony. You'll see here President Bush and Obama and Trump, who are all visiting the troops. You see they'll shake hands, they'll take pictures and help with morale and letting the troops know that they're not just there to boss them around as commander-in-chief, but to really support them. Here's the Reagan Presidential Library. So this is the sign out front. This is what it looks like up in the hills of California. Let me see if I can get that menu to go away so that you guys can see it. It is a really beautiful building. That part, the big white building with all of the glass, actually houses the airplane used as Air Force One when Ronald Reagan was president. So you can see right here that Air Force One inside the building. So this glass right here looks out onto the California mountains, and that's this part of the building down here at the bottom. They have this museum set up where you can actually walk through the Air Force One that President Reagan would fly around in. And lastly, we have some examples of the first pet. So here is the first Mrs. Bush with her dog and President Obama with his dog, as they were both members of the first family living in the White House. Here are a few of our traditions. So you'll see the lighting of the Christmas tree, Halloween at the White House. Here's the Easter egg roll in a couple of these pictures. Another example of decorating the White House for Halloween. This one, they actually had a real Christmas tree that they cut down and brought in the old-fashioned way. And lastly, President Obama pardoning the Thanksgiving turkey. So this guy did not become Thanksgiving dinner that year. Now, here are some examples of presidential portraits. So you'll see they are paintings most of the time, and that's why they might look a little bit like blurry photos. Some of them also can be different interpretations. So you can have very formal ones where you see them actually painted in the White House, like both of the Bushes here, President Clinton here, Ronald Reagan here. Okay, you can have the other interpretations, like here is JFK, but you'll notice there's nothing in the background. It's just the color. You'll see President Nixon up here in his formal photo, and then in the middle, the Obamas with their official portraits that were painted in a much more unique style. So these people get say a little bit in how their presidential portrait is going to look.